Black Pharaohs. It's a hot topic nowadays, but I feel like it's time for me to put out my 2 cents on the matter, seeing that I'm of Egyptian descent myself, so I feel somewhat invested in this whole discussion. The Black Ancient Egyptian thing is something I've seen numerous discussions about, and it always seems to turn out into one person calling the other person a bigot of what variation. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. Welcome back, my dear friends and foes. Today we're talking Egyptian history. The inspiration for this video was this video of the Metatron, which is about the recent Netflix documentary about Cleopatra. And I wasn't aware of its existence up until I saw that video. Yeah, so thanks for that. It's a comforting feeling to know that when I get a bit too relaxed, I can always jump into one of his commentary videos and just get my blood pressure right back up, seeing all the stupidity people are trying to pass off as history. And although I agree with him, it isn't really an opinion, is it? It's quite clearly a fact that Cleopatra was explicitly of Macedonian Greek descent, as she was a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty. I don't feel like going all too deep into that specific discussion. No person with a fully functioning brain should take Netflix serious when it comes to anime and especially history. I'm looking at you, Graham Hancock, but instead of trying to refute the notion of Cleopatra being black, I think it's way more valuable to highlight some of the actual black pharaohs that have ruled Egypt in ancient times, as I feel like they get swept under the rug when it comes to this discussion specifically, but also in Egyptian history in general. And before we start, I want to note that Egyptian history is vast. For reference, Cleopatra lived closer to the moon landing than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramids of Giza. Yeah. This means that everything regarding this topic should be approached with a great sense of nuance, as it is impossible to condense thousands of years of history into anything palatable. But we're gonna try anyway, so yeah, let's go. Who were the Black Pharaohs? The Black Pharaohs of ancient Egypt are known under several names: the Kushite Empire, the Nubian dynasty, or just simply as the 25th dynasty. These pharaohs had their origin in the kingdom of Kush, what is modern-day Sudan, but also had been referenced to by ancient Egyptians as Nubia, which was derived from their word for gold, as it was a region full of gold. The kingdom of Kush was one of great accomplishments. They existed from 2500 BCE all the way up to the 4th century CE, and throughout their existence have had several capitals over time, but the most notable ones were Kerma from 2500 to 1500 BCE, Napata, which became the capital around the 8th century BCE, and Meroe, which would become the capital somewhere around the 4th century BCE. The kingdom of Kush was renowned for their art and architecture, which took form from both indigenous African traditions as from neighboring cultures like Egypt and other Near East realms. Their temples and palaces were adorned with elaborate frescoes and carvings, and they produced some of the finest jewelry and pottery of their time. But they weren't just a bunch of saucy boys spending their entire day just producing luxury goods. The Kushites had a well-organized complex form of governance, with local government being handled by regional governors, a complex set of laws overseen by council of judges which were appointed by the king or queen, and said king or queen which was the absolute ruler of the realm as both the political and also the religious leader. The royal family would often be viewed as the mediator between the gods and the people, as the Kushites worshipped a complex pantheon of deities, and the royal family played an important role in maintaining the favor of the gods through religious rituals and ceremonies alike. For example, the anointing of the king, which was one of the most important religious ceremonies in Kushite society. This ceremony involved the application of sacred oils and ointments to the king's body, symbolizing his divine right to rule and his connection to the gods. But we aren't done yet, because not only did they have their own distinct culture, their own distinct religion, a booming economy, and some of the finest artisans of their time, they were also pretty freaking good at warfare. At one specific moment during the reign of King Taharqa in the 7th century BCE, the army was estimated to number around 100,000 soldiers. It was made up of both professionals, which were recruited from the royal guards, as well as conscripts, which were levied from the population. They were known for both using infantry and cavalry, using the latter one to maneuver quickly around the battlefield, and they they even deployed war elephants to break the ranks of their enemies and trample them into oblivion. The Kushites were no joke. And even the Romans got a taste of that, because in the 1st century BCE, the Roman Empire began to expand into North Africa and attempted to conquer the kingdom of Kush. However, the Kushite armies, led by the Queen Amanirenas, were able to fight off the Roman invasions and even launched a successful counterattack, invading Roman Egypt and sacking the city of Aswan, which is insane. And also a great segue to the next part. How did they become pharaoh? Well, it's the 8th century BCE, and this is King Pi. This is King P, and this is Egypt. And King P looked at Egypt and thought, thus launching an invasion to lay claim on the Egyptian throne. He marched his armies north, crossed the Nile, handily defeated the Egyptian army at the city of Heracleopolis, and took both Memphis and Thebes, consolidating his control of the entire country. He took on the title of pharaoh and established a new dynasty, and in typical pharaonic fashion would construct numerous temples and even pyramids. The Kushite dynasty would rule Egypt for the coming 100 years, during which both cultures intertwined even more with one another than they already previously had, with a lot of Kushite influence being brought into the Egyptian culture through both architecture and religion. For example, Amun, who was originally a Kushite deity that later would be adopted by the Egyptians themselves as a national god. But it wasn't just that. You see, the Kushites were very keen on restoring the ancient Egyptian culture and religion in the kingdom, as they were both religious, but they also shared a common history and ancestry when it comes to cultural and religious identity. Not only would the revival of ancient Egyptian culture help legitimize their own claims to the throne of Egypt, it was also to bring back that what they viewed as what has been lost over time in the north. They believed that by honoring the traditional gods and performing the appropriate rituals, they could ensure the protection and prosperity of their kingdom and people. Now, eventually the Assyrians came along and they invaded Egypt and pushed back the Kushites down south into the kingdom of Kush. But the Kushite kingdom had established themselves as a regional powerhouse, and the influence the Kushite rulers have had on Egyptian history, mainly by reviving a lot of the ancient practices, was immensely and shouldn't be underestimated. But like I said, the kingdom of Kush had established themselves as a regional powerhouse, and they would withstand the test of time for another 1,000 years, which is insane. So to surmise, yes, there were black ancient Egyptians. The Kushites and the Egyptians shared a common history, and control of the lands swapped several times between the northern and the southern regions. Both realms were multi-ethnic, as there were Kushites living in Egypt and Egyptians living in Kush, and probably being assimilated on both sides. Yet, despite their similarities and influence on one another, they developed their very own distinct cultures. And yes, there were black pharaohs, quite a few actually, just not Cleopatra. And what I find ironic is that around the same time in history, the Kushite kingdom was ruled by Queen Amanirenas, which was a warrior queen that would defy Roman occupation. They would push them back and would even launch a successful counterattack into Roman Egypt, sacking the city of Aswan. My point being that black history or African history is extremely rich and extremely diverse, and ignoring all of that in favor of some novel historical inaccuracy, to me that just seems like a disservice to that which you are actually trying to highlight, which is black history. I mean, to me it just seems like a weird choice and a missed opportunity at the same time. And on top of that, to me it just feels like once again Egyptian culture has been reduced to being Hollywood's plaything, just this time under the guise of a documentary. But yeah, it's still better than Jamie Lannister as Horus, so yeah.
Who's that?
Who the fuck is that guy?
Jamie fucking Lannister.